You want to give some real thought to the design you put into your projects. For the indie, the difficulty of your designs could mean the difference between getting it done or not. For example, Production I.G is known for very rich, complex, and realistic designs, but animators have complained that it can take up to an hour to draw one of their very realistic frames. That's not going to work for the indie. I heard it said, although I don't know if it's true, that the original Oh My Goddess OVA series could not get more episodes done because the hair of the main character was too difficult to draw. Indies cannot afford to put these kinds of designs into their show, especially a one-man show. They should instead learn from great creators like Dragon Ball's Akira Toriyama and go with very simplistic designs. Simplistic designs have a number of great advantages, especially since we're talking about animation and not doing manga. The faster you can draw a single frame, then the more frames you can draw over the course of a working day, and that means the more animation you get done. Now, doing those simplistic designs, it's actually more about what you leave out than what you put in. In a comic book character or a manga character, you may draw a lot of lines, especially in areas like the hair. But when you do simplistic designs, you don't want to go so detailed and draw too many lines in any place, let alone the hair. The thing about simplistic designs is you can also go with thicker lines. One of the things you may notice, especially in Production I.G's feature films, is very thin, almost unnoticeable lines. You don't necessarily want to go through that if you're going into simplistic direction. Thicker lines means it becomes easier to design and show the form of your character, and you can do a cell in a minute instead of an hour. I recently saw a French animated trailer. It's actually a promotional work for an upcoming graphic novel, not an animated film. It was done by the Gobelins Institute students. This trailer really employs simplistic designs and, different from anime, has a lot more motion rather than sharp, complex designs and very little motion. What can we learn from that? Well, there are things you can do with thick lines and simplistic character designs which might be a bit more difficult to pull off with very sharp lines and very complex, realistic characters. Imagine, in the past, cells were actually hand-painted on the backside of actual cellophane paper. In the world of digital ink and paint, however, tools like flood fill could be used to quickly fill areas of your character. You can imagine, with thin lines and so many more lines in your design, that just means many more areas to fill and more difficulty in doing that fill. That also translates into more time. So, when you go with thicker lines and more simplistic characters, you can easily see that flood filling your character becomes a very quick operation. Now imagine when you actually go with thicker lines and simplistic characters, you can also go with more motion. Well, with more cells to fill, having a simpler character means it all gets done faster. If you're using a raster or pixel-based paint program, there is another issue that comes up as opposed to using a vector program like Flash or Toon Boom. You see, the edges you draw will be defined in pixels. If you have a space where two lines don't connect, you then have a gap in which your flood fill color can spill outside of. This may sound like a small thing, but running into this problem over the course of many frames can really slow down your workflow and kill your project momentum. This becomes even more difficult to see when you're using very thin lines and very complex characters. Thicker lines helps you to be able to get around this a lot more easily. If you're drawing in HD with lines that are only a single pixel in width, and you may be zoomed out to a certain degree, it may be impossible to see some of the problems. But with thicker lines, you can be completely zoomed out and you can see everything you need, and any problems that might appear are very apparent and you can work around them. Thicker lines and simplistic characters can really save your project. Your designs, of course, have to work for the story that you're telling, but you don't want to kill your own enthusiasm by making it more difficult than it has to be. AnigenII!